Krishna. Hari 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 Ram, Hari Ram, Rama Rama Hari Hari. Hare Krishna. So we're streaming now. Yes, very good. Hari Ram, Hari Ram, Ram Ram, Hari Hari, Hari Krishna, Hari Krishna, Krishna, Hari Hari, Hari Ram, Hari Ram, Rama Rama, Hari Hari, Hari Krishna, Hari Krishna, Krishna, Hari Hari, Hari Ram, Hari Ram, Rama Rama, Hari Hari, Hari Ram, Hari Ram, Rama Rama, Hari Hari, Hari Krishna, Hari Krishna, Krishna, Hari Hari, Hari Ram, Hari Ram, Ram Ram, Hari Hari, Hari Krishna, Hari Krishna, Krishna, Hari Hari, Hari Ram, Hari Ram, Ram Ram, Hari Hari, Hari Krishna, Hari Krishna, Krishna, Hari Hari, Hari Ram, Hari Ram, Rama Rama, Hari Hari, Hari Krishna, Hari Krishna, Krishna, Hari Hari, Hari Ram, Hari Ram, Rama Rama, Hari Hari, Hari Krishna, Hari Krishna, Krishna, Hari Hari, Hari Ram. Jai Courtney, Jai Geetika, Jai Kishore. Hari Ram, Hari Ram, Ram Ram, Hari Hari, Hari Krishna, Hari Krishna, Krishna, Hari Hari, Hari Ram, Hari Ram, Rama Rama, Hari Hari, Hari Krishna, 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 Hari Hari, Hari Ram, Hari Ram. Rama Rama, Hari Hari, Hari Krishna, Krishna, Krishna. Okay, so Instagram is on. Can you go on to Instagram? Rama Rama, Hari Hari, Hari Krishna, Hari Krishna. Okay, look out. Rama Rama, Hari Hari, Hari Krishna. Oh, okay. Into where? Everything. Okay. Okay. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram. All right. Okay. Well, 1 minute. Radna Manuta. Nana Shastra Vacharane Kanipano Sadharma Samsta Hako Lokanamita Karim Tribhuvane Manyo Sharamya Karo Radha Krishna Padaravinda Bhajana Nandena Mataliko Vande Rupa Sanatana Raghuyaga Sri Jiva Gopala Hare Krishna devotees, welcome to our 10th evening program on Nectar of Devotion. Thank you for coming. Very nice to be here with you all. Let us begin by chanting our dedication to the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan. Nana Shastra Vicharanai Kanipano Sadharma Samstapako Lokanam Hitakarino Tribhuvane Manyo Sharanya Karo Radha Krishna Padaravinda Bhajana Nandena Mataliko Vande Rupa Sanatano Raghuyago Shri Jiva Gopalako Vande Rupa Sanatano Raghuyago Shri Jiva Gopalako. Translation. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the 6 Goswamis, namely Sri Sanatan Goswami, Sri Rupa Goswami, Sri Raghunath Bhatta Goswami, Sri Raghunath Das Goswami, Sri Jiva Goswami, and Sri Gopal Bhatta Goswami, who are very expert in scrutinizingly studying all the revealed scriptures with the aim of establishing eternal religious principles for the benefit of all human beings. Thus, they're honored all over the 3 worlds, and they're worth taking shelter of because they're absorbed in the mood of the gopis and are engaged in the transcendental loving service of Radha and Krishna. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharne Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pastyachadeshatarne Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadha Shivas Adi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya evacha patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Yes, so we're in the middle of the general discussion about sadhana bhakti, and we have just entered into the more focused discussion on Vaidhi sadhana bhakti, which is going to go on. It's going to go on till the end of chapter 14. Oh yes, so there's plenty to be said about Vaidhi sadhana bhakti. So yes, we just started getting into it. And we noted how Srila Prabhupada emphasized the importance of following the rules and regulations. When you are doing devotional service according to the rules and regulations, you should follow the rules and regulations. Yes, of course there can be such a thing as overdoing it. Yes, and just becoming too rigid. But still, one really does need to be mindful of the rules and regulations. And particularly, one has to be careful not to break any of them. Yes, when you are on our type of level or levels. So anyway, we made a start. We read a couple of verses. One was a question from Maharaj Parikshit to Shukadev Goswami, that what are we to do? What are we to do? Actually, not just to Shukadev, but to all the assembled Brahmins who were there when Maharaj Parikshit was fasting and trying to fulfill his mission of life. So he wanted to know, what is the unalloyed duty of everyone in all circumstances? Duty, of course, implies something like a rule, something you are meant to do. And if you don't do it, that's not good. So that was the initial inquiry from Maharaj Parikshit, to which Shukadev Goswami responded that everyone under all circumstances, and particularly those facing death, must, by all means, hear about, glorify, and remember the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So that's a very essential part of Krishna consciousness in a broad sense, but particularly in this context, it's a very important part of Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti. And so now we're carrying on. We're carrying on from that point, and we'll finish the chapter 2, and let's see. Of course, we'll just see, but if time permits, we will actually go into chapter 3. There's no hard and fast rule that we can't go from one chapter into another during the course of one class. So let us see, first of all. I suspect we may do that. All right, so now, if we don't become Krishna conscious, we read some things after those 2 verses. If you don't become Krishna conscious, then you get thrown into the cycle of birth and death. And then we go on to, we're now in our PDF, we're on page 23, for those of you who are following it on the PDF. And we are now looking at the last full paragraph on that page. The last full paragraph, let me just have a look here. Where are we? The last full paragraph on that page 23. Last full paragraph. Where are we? 24, 23. Okay, yes. So, emphasis is there. Okay, last full paragraph then. It begins with the words, in the Padma Purana. In the Padma Purana also, the same process is advised. And there, slightly different perspective, remembrance is being emphasized. This is called dhyana or meditation, Prabhupada says, always remembering Krishna. Yes, so Padma Purana, Prabhupada says there, recommends that one always fixes mind on the form of Vishnu by meditation, not forget him at any moment. This now, Srila Prabhupada is referring to, or paraphrasing really, a very important verse. This verse from Padma Purana, which appears in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu also, right here. And let us just tell you the verse. I'm sure some of you will remember, be familiar with the verse. Smartavya satatam Vishnua vismartavyo najatu chit sarve vidi nisheda syur etayor eva kinkara. And the literal translation is, Krishna is the origin of Lord Vishnu. He should always be remembered and never forgotten at any time. All the rules and prohibitions mentioned in the Shastras should be the servants of these two principles. Yeah, let's just have a look at the way Prabhupada paraphrases it. So, let's see. Padma Purana, so I'm in that last paragraph, the one that begins in the Padma Purana. Last paragraph on page 23 of our PDF file. Padma Purana recommends that one always fix his mind on the form of Vishnu by meditation and not forget him at any moment. And this state of consciousness is called samadhi or trance. We should always try to mold the activities of our lives in such a way that we will constantly remember Vishnu or Krishna. That is Krishna consciousness. Whether one concentrates his mind on the four-handed form of Vishnu or on the form of two-handed Krishna, it is the same. Padma Purana recommends, somehow or other, always think of Vishnu or Krishna without forgetting him under any circumstances. And then Prabhupada makes a very important statement. Devotees, listen to this. Actually, this is the most basic of all regulative principles. Catch that, please. Those of you who are trying to really get into this seminar, note that down, because you can't get a lot more important than that. Yes. And let's just continue what Prabhupada's saying. He's still basically analyzing the same verse. So it's the most basic of all regulative principles, because when there's an order from a superior about doing something, there is simultaneously a prohibition. When the order is that one should always remember Krishna, the prohibition is that one should never forget him. Within this simple order and prohibition, all regulative principles are found complete. Did you catch that also? Did you catch that? In Zoom land, Punyale, Instagram, Punyatna, and Facebook land and anywhere else where you're tuned in. That, let me just repeat that sentence. Within this simple order and prohibition, all regulative principles are found complete. So in other words, this, when we talk about Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti, the practice of devotional service, according to the rules and regulations given by the spiritual master and given by scripture and the previous acharyas like that. Then, when we talk about the whole process, which is all, as we've said many times now, is all revolving around rules and regulations in one way or another, this is the main rule. This is the main rule in Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti. That you always remember Krishna, you never forget him, and whatever it takes to fulfill that, you just make sure you do it. I remember when I was a very new devotee, it was like I'd been living in the temple not more than 2 to 3 weeks. A new boy, almost 50 years ago, almost 48 years ago. Anyway, whatever, something like that. And I got the opportunity to drive, because I had been a fanatical driver before. I got the opportunity to drive one very senior devotee, Hari Vilas Prabhu, from central London, where our temple was, down to the docks in Dover, because he was based in France. So he was going to take a boat across the English Channel and then somehow get back to Paris. So I drove him, and it takes 2 or 3 hours or something, I forget. But, a few hours it takes to get down to the coast. And he preached to me non-stop. Non-stop. That's Hari Vilas. He preaches non-stop. I was with him a couple of years ago. We drove from the Govardhan Eco Village to the airport in Mumbai, and he preached to me non-stop. And there were a few others there also, like a couple of others, I suppose. And he preached to us non-stop. So one thing he said, which really struck me, and I remember it to this day, and I do mention it from time to time, so you may have heard me say it, is that he told me, we started talking about the rules and regulations and how do I find the rules and regulations and that sort of thing. And he said, well, I said, yeah, well, it's intense. He said, well, actually, there's only one rule, really. And he quoted this verse. You always remember Krishna and you never forget Krishna. And that's it. And I thought, really? That's good. I like that. It's not so intense. But after a little while, I found that it wasn't so easy to do that. Just always remember Krishna. Just never forget him. It's just not so easy. And therefore this verse says here, Sarve vidhi nishedasur, all the vidhis, all the rules, and nishade, all the prohibitions, etayor eva kinkara. They are all, well, the term Prabhupada's used as servants. Kinkara, it means servant, it's true, but it's an intimate type of servant. It's not just your everyday run-of-the-mill servant. A kinkara is a close servant. Like there's definitely an element of friendship in the relationship. It's not just the master to the boss to the servant. There's an element of intimacy. So like that, all the other rules and prohibitions, do this, don't do that, there's many. We're going to read through all of them shortly in a few days or so. So they're all intimate servants of these two, always remembering Krishna and never forgetting him. Two, or you could say just one. Yeah. And they're all servants, intimate, close servants, because they're supporting and assisting and, like balancing things out. And they play a very important part in this whole program of always remembering Krishna, or trying to always remember Krishna and trying not to forget him. So anyway, remember that. Remember that. That's important. And so we go down to the next paragraph. It's the second paragraph on this page, which is, what is it now? It is whatever it is. It is page 24. We're on page 24 now of our PDF. So it is the second paragraph, and it begins, this regulative principle is applicable to all varnas and ashrams. Yes. So, this regulative principle of always remembering Krishna and never forgetting Krishna as like the essence of Vaidhi sadhana bhakti, or, obviously in a sense it's the essence of just Krishna consciousness. We don't want to progress in Krishna unconsciousness. Krishna consciousness, being conscious of Krishna, can only be there if we're remembering Krishna and not forgetting him. If we're not remembering him but we're forgetting him, then how can we say we're in Krishna consciousness? Anyway, at least, in a sort of, if we examine things carefully, it's like that. So now, what's going to happen now? Let me just tell you what's going to happen now. From here until the end, then what is going to happen is there's going to be a discussion on basically on Varnashram as a context, as a type of a context. I wouldn't even say just simply as a context, but as to some degree, in some important ways, a context for the practice and development of Krishna consciousness. So, first thing to note about Varnashram, if we're going to really put it into effect properly and as effectively as possible, the thing is that this rule applies in Varnashram. It's not that there's sometimes talk about how ISKCON needs to put Varnashram more into effect, and some devotees are very into that idea. But to whatever degree, or just say, anyone who's really trying to apply Varnashram, that's all very well, but still the main principle remains to always remember Krishna and never forget him. This is what Prabhupada goes into saying here. Well, he begins, this regulative principle is applicable to all varnas and ashrams, the castes and occupations of life. And then in that paragraph, second paragraph on page 24, then Prabhupada just basically lists out the varnas and ashrams. We don't really need to go through that. I think you all know that pretty well by now. And going on to the third paragraph on page 24 of our PDF, which begins, if this injunction is followed. Well, if this injunction is followed, then all other rules and regulations will automatically fall into line. How's that? How's that? So it really is to always remember Krishna and never forget him, and then to have that supported by your following of various other rules and regulations, which are secondary to it, but still they're pretty much essential for supporting it and really empowering it to really take effect nicely. So if this injunction is followed, then all other rules and regulations will automatically fall into line. All other rules and regulations should be treated as assistants or servants to this one basic principle. Yeah. Uh-huh. So, yes, one point I'd like to make, this whole subject of Varnashram, and specifically Varnashram and ISKCON, it's not an easy subject. It's been debated by numerous, including some of the most senior, most Krishna conscious and most intelligent devotees for years and years. But you couldn't say that the whole discussion has really come to like a united, conclusive conclusion. There are different schools of thought here and there. Yeah, and certainly, I mean, other than the very simple context in which Prabhupada applied Varnashram himself within ISKCON, other than that, there's not been a lot of development of Varnashram in ISKCON for not much, at least, other than in certain places where you got some people who are really, they're really enthusiastic about it. Aha. So, but, here's an important and interesting point. In Chaitanya Charitamrita, Lord Chaitanya talks about two types of Varnashram. One is called Daivi Varnashram, Daivi meaning divine, or coming from God. He's the Deva, and this is the Daiva. So it's all under him. Daivi Varnashram, godly, Krishna conscious Varnashram. And then there's another form of Varnashram, which is Asuri Varnashram, which of course means demoniac, or just say plain materialistic, which of course ultimately ends up being demoniac. And in many ways, they look the same. If you overlook the presence of Krishna in the Daivi Varnashram, and you're looking at you're looking at Daivi Varnashram, but you're not taking Krishna into consideration. And then you look at the Asuri Varnashram, in so many ways, you will not be able to distinguish them from each other because it's all Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Sudra, Sannyasi, Vanaprastha, Grihastha, Brahmachari. That's what it is. And different, sort of intricacies and involvements in those terms, involvements in life, in a way of life. But Lord Chaitanya says in Chaitanya Charitamrita that if someone tries to do Varnashram, the Asuri Varnashram, non-Krishna conscious, simply on the material level, then Lord Chaitanya says that that person will go to hell. Hari Bol, Hare Krishna. Whereas on the other hand, quite a number of very positive things are said about Daivi Varnashram, and even here there's a number of quotes. We may read a couple here and there, which are just very supportive of Varnashram, but specifically in a Krishna conscious context. Very specifically. It's really important. Otherwise, things start going off the rails fairly rapidly. So, okay, but now for the rest of the chapter, it's essentially a discussion of these 4 varnas and 4 ashrams, and in a sense, just how important it is that they're all engaged in Krishna consciousness. Yeah. Let's just have a look. We're not going to read through the whole thing. There's discussions about what is the duty of a Kshatriya, what's the duty of a Vaishya, a Brahmin. I'm just gonna take it that you all know these things well enough already. If you don't, well, I don't know what to say. If you don't, well, you should. You better, or something. But you should. To be taking this course, this seminar, you should know enough about Krishna consciousness to be clear what is Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Sudra, and what is Sannyasi, Vanaprastha, Grihastha, and Brahmachari. All right, so they're different, basically, pretty much, maybe not exactly, but it's pretty much in each paragraph, there is a verse about the importance of Varnashram. Yeah, about the importance of Varnashram. And in the context of Krishna consciousness. So let's see. Prabhupada, there's the last paragraph, the very last paragraph on page 24. Before we hit page 25, is that so all these different activities have to go on, the 4 social orders and spiritual orders. The target of these activities, however, is always the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So whether one's Brahman, Sudra, one has to satisfy the Supreme Lord by one's activities. This is also confirmed in Srimad Bhagavatam by a verse. No number is given, but by a verse which reads, everyone must be engaged in his particular duty, but the perfection of such work should be tested by how far the Lord is satisfied with such activities. Let's go on to the next paragraph, and what should we do? Well, the duties of a Brahmin are described there. First paragraph on page 25 of our PDF. For example, a Brahmin who is born out of the head of the Lord has as his business to preach the transcendental Vedic sounds or Shabda Brahma. Yes. And, oh, look at this. He also has to eat on behalf of the Supreme Lord. Oh, and he volunteers to become a Brahmin. Oh, but it's not, however, that the Brahmin should simply eat on behalf of the Lord and not preach the message of Bhagavad Gita to the world. Yeah. And then the Kshatriya is described next paragraph, second paragraph on that page. Then the Vaishyas, they should produce agricultural products, trade them, distribute them. Then there's the Sudras, and it's all going on like this. Cooperating together under the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then, going on slightly, another paragraph, let's see. Lord Sri Krishna instructed Uddhava, Prabhupada's paraphrasing a verse here, that by following the injunctions of the social and spiritual orders of human society, one can satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and as a result of such satisfaction, the whole society gets all the necessities of life amply and without difficulty. Yes. Okay. And life will be very good. Prabhupada says the whole world will be turned into Vaikuntha, even without being transferred to the kingdom of God. By following the injunctions of Srimad Bhagavatam and prosecuting the duties of Krishna consciousness, all human society will be happy in all respects. So now we've come to the second to last paragraph. Yes, in this chapter. And let's read this verse here. It is Lord Krishna in the 11th canto, 27th chapter, verse 49, speaking to Uddhava. My dear Uddhava, all persons are engaged in activities, whether those indicated in the revealed scriptures or ordinary worldly activities. If, by the result of either of such activities, they worship me in Krishna consciousness, then automatically they become very happy within this world as well as in the next. Of this, there is no doubt. So Prabhupada sums up the section here about Varnashram and remembering and not forgetting Krishna. And, obviously it's important. He's given quite a bit of space to this discussion. But Prabhupada, anyway, listen to this. Fasten your seatbelts first. Are you ready? Thus, the Krishna consciousness movement is so nice that there is no need of even designating oneself Brahman, Kshatriya, Shudra, Brahmachari, Grihastha, Vanaprastha, or Sannyasi. Haribol. Okay, anyway, Hare Krishna. Let everyone be engaged in whatever occupation he now has. Simply let him worship Lord Krishna by the result of his activities in Krishna consciousness. That will adjust the whole situation. Everyone will be happy and peaceful. Yeah, so that's nice. And last thing, let's conclude this chapter, and before we go on to chapter 3, by reading this quotation from Narada Pancharatra. Any activity sanctioned in the revealed scriptures and aiming at the satisfaction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are accepted by saintly teachers as the regulative principles of devotional service. If one regularly executes such service unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead under the direction of a bona fide spiritual master, then gradually he rises to the platform of serving in pure love of God. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. But don't go away. We're going to go on now into chapter 3. Yeah. Right, yes. Let us go on to... Well, actually, just before I do that, I want to... Here's another related point to just what we just read right now about Prabhupada not emphasizing Varnashram in sort of the narrow terms that it's generally understood. Lord Chaitanya said something related. It's actually in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila, chapter 13, verse 80. Have you written that down? Did you write that down? Did you write that down? Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila, chapter 13, verse 80. Yeah, it's very much along these lines of, don't get too stressed about the sort of the fine details of Varnashram. So in Madhya Lila 13:80, Lord Chaitanya says, Na ham vipro na chanarapatir, na pivaisho na shudro, na ham varni na cha griha patir, no vanasto yatirva. Kintu projan nikila paramananda punamritab der, gopi bartu padakamalayor, das adas anudas. Which means, I am not a Brahmin, I am not a Kshatriya, I'm not a Vaishya or a Sudra, nor am I a brahmachari, a householder, a vanaprastha, or a sannyasi. I identify myself only as the servant of the servant of the servant of the lotus feet of Lord Sri Krishna, the maintainer of the gopis. He is like an ocean of nectar, and he is the cause of universal transcendental bliss. He is always existing with brilliance. So, yeah, those of you who are doing the Bhakti Shastri, Nectar of Devotion, take note of this, all right? Take note of this. Always remember this verse and don't forget it. At least. Anyway, seriously. It's a pretty good idea anyway. But particularly in terms of your studies. All right, so now we do have, say, 10 minutes or something like that. Let us launch into chapter 3. Here we go. Okay, so chapter 3 is titled Eligibility of the Candidate for Accepting Devotional Service. You know, accepting devotional service seems to be particularly more emphasizing becoming a devotee, getting into it. Yeah, like that. So what are the qualifications for someone to become a devotee then? Yeah. Let me just tune you a little. Let me tune you a little. Do you still say that in Chatsworth? When you're informing someone, you know, you're tuning. Tune, sorry. Tuning. Excuse me. Простите меня, пожалуйста. There are 4 main sections in this chapter. Let us just point out what they are. We'll repeat them where are we? On Monday night, yeah. So, the first point is, how does someone receive devotional service? How does someone become a devotee from not being a devotee, just being an ordinary conditioned person in material life? Okay, that's point number 1. We will have a look at it maybe for a few minutes just now. Then second section is that generally speaking, there are 3 levels of devotees. 3 levels of devotees who have 3 levels, you could say, of eligibility in devotional service. Eligibility either to become, or if not to become, but eligibility to progress in certain specific ways in devotional service, depending on the level. So that's very important. And fourth, where am I? No, sorry. So number 2 was 3 levels of devotees. Number 1 is how do you get devotional service? 2 is there are 3 levels of devotees in terms of eligibility. 3 is an elaborate description of 4 types of beginners, kanishtas, is the technical term. 4 types of them, or arguably, not just 4 types of kanishtas, but 4 types of pre-kanishtas. If they're to be considered kanishta, they're on the most elementary levels of kanishta. Really, they're more sort of in marginal positions between kanishta and just not being a devotee. And then 4th section is that there are dangers, particularly for these people, the kanishtas or pre-kanishtas. There are dangers for them in their attempts to become devotees or to advance in Krishna consciousness. And actually, ultimately, those dangers are the main dangers, arguably, for everyone in Krishna consciousness. Okay, I'm going to go into the first section here. It is discussing the subject of how does one get devotional service? How does someone become a devotee? like this. Aha. Okay. So the very first paragraph reads, on account of on account of his association with Mahatmas or great souls, 100% in the devotional service of the Lord, one may attain a little bit of attraction for Sri Krishna, but at the same time, one may remain very much attached to fruitive activities and material sense enjoyment and not be prepared to undergo the different types of renunciation. Such a person, if he has unflinching attraction to Krishna, becomes an eligible candidate for discharging devotional service. Well, anyway, the way it's worded, it's a little, I mean, I've always been puzzled about this, but how could you have unflinching attraction to Krishna, but remain very much attached to fruitive activities and material sense enjoyment? It's, you know, I think it's, the problem is the editors. I'm sure it's not Prabhupada's. But basically the idea is someone is quite attached, but they have an interest in Krishna consciousness. It's something like that. It must be something like that. I have my doubt it's quite as extreme as very much attached, but unflinching attraction. Anyway, Hare Krishna. In this regard, I want to read to you two verses from Srimad Bhagavatam, spoken by Lord Krishna to Uddhava. They're two pretty amazing verses, and they have great similarities to what we've just read, but they're actually a little easier to kind of penetrate. It's the 11th canto, chapter 20, verses 27 and 28. 11, 20, 27, and 28. I'll just read the translation, or I'll read the Sanskrit. Jata Shrado Matkataso, Nirvana Sarvakaramaso, Veda Dukat Makan Kaman, Paratyage Pyanishvara, Tato Bhajeta Mam Prita, Shraddha Lurdrida Nishchaya, Jushamanas Chato Chatan Kaman, Duko Darkams Chagarhayan. Now listen to this, devotees. Listen to this. I mean, some of you may kind of recognize yourself to some degree, or what you used to be, or something like that, in this verse. Having developed faith in topics about me, and being because this is Krishna speaking, having developed faith in topics about me, and being disgusted with all karmas, a devotee knows that all enjoyments are filled with misery, but he is unable to give them up. Still, with affection for me, with faith and determination, he will continue worshiping me, while at the same time partaking of those enjoyments which give rise to suffering, and yet condemning them. Haribol. Slightly schizophrenic type of situation, but I think you know these things go on. These things go on. They really do. And in the first line of his purport to these two verses, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, in these two verses, Krishna speaks of the initial state of a person qualified for bhakti. Hare Krishna. That's interesting. All right. Now, we have not, and we're not going to be able to complete this whole section, and it's so important that I do want to go back to it on Monday evening. So I think, devotees, if it's okay with all of you, I think we'll just finish here. We'll just finish here for this evening. There's a lot of food for thought there, a lot of interesting things. So, Hare Krishna, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Okay, I have stopped Facebook. Facebook has stopped. So what to do here?
Can I just come
Yeah, yeah. Uh-oh. Okay, Hare Krishna. Jai Zoom. See you later. Hari Bol. See you later. All right. Yeah, 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 yeah.